What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. New video.
I rep the West to the death, but my life is better. I've shed blood, shed tears, man, I stormed bad weather. I caught an L at 19, that's a cold-ass letter. But now I'm back in the world and trying to make it better forever. They counted me out at a young age, but now I'm living proof. I'm in this booth, I'm spitting truth, you see me on the tube. The Dub Show, homies bounce and roll. The Dub Show.
Today's video is gonna be another prison video. I know you guys seem to like those videos more. You know, I've explained that, you know, when I tell prison stories, I go back to prison mentally, right? But it's important for me to remember my roots and why I started this channel. I want to give people a glimpse at what prison really is. No glorifying, no glamorizing, just to look at the ugly truth of it, right? Okay, now, this video, I want to talk about doing time with dudes that started doing time before there were ever any Southerners, Northerners, or Bulldogs. I remember when I first hit New Folsom, one of my cellies was from the Harbor area. This was 1995. And he was already close to 60 years old. He wasn't a Southerner. He had a homeboy on the yard, around the same age as him. He wasn't a Southerner. Two dudes from the Harbor area. I remember a homie, I've talked a lot about him. And he was from Dakota, which is a neighborhood in Northern California. He ran with the Southerners. I had a cellie that was one of the original founding members of Las Flores, also known as El Monte Flores. He wasn't a Southerner, but he ran with Southerners. Every one of these dudes made it clear to me that they were not Southsiders, that they were not Southerners, but that they believed in the same thing as what the Southerners were supposed to believe in. And all of them made it clear to me, what would I look like claiming to be something that came around after I had already been in the system for years, and I've already put in a gang of work before it came out. And I know a lot of people, they're like, what? What is he talking about? The South and North, that was something that came out in the late 70s, early 80s, and it came out of the California Youth Authority. And that's why I always trip out when we hear the propaganda, the fallacy that Southerners and whites always move together and they do this together and they do that together, when the activities they're really talking about occurred before there was even such a thing as a Southerner in the system. But they don't know how to differentiate. They don't know the truth. So they speak a lie. I remember being in it was like Central Control on our way to B facility. When the day I arrived at New Folsom, we had left, caught the bus from Wasco reception to New Folsom. And there was this he was an older dude from Fresno, big ass dude. He was in the same building with me. We were all in D1 together. Back then, that was the Lifer building. 1994, 95, that was the Lifer building in Wasco reception, D1. And I'm telling you, this old man, this older dude was yoked up. His name was Tone from Fresno. And I remember when we were in R&R. Now, I can't speak for anyone else, but I know Southerners that are school right. When the cop asks you, hey, who you house with? You tell them Mexicans. You don't help the Judas. If they put the wrong person in your cell, then you dealt with it. But the way I was schooled, the way I was run down, hey, you don't tell the Judas, hey, I'm a Southerner. They're going to use that as a point to validate you. Tell them you're Mexican. Don't identify yourself with your mouth. Let your actions speak for you, right? So, when they ask me, hey, who do you house with? I'm Mexican. They know who you house with already. So but they got your tone from Fresno. And the female officer, she asked him, who do you house with? And he said, I'm from Fresno. And she said, oh, you're a bulldog. He said, nah, I'm not a bulldog. I'm from Fresno. And she said, well, do you house with Northerners? He said, I'm from Fresno. And it became a big old argument. His thing was the same thing. I spoke to him once we were on the yard. And he was like, yeah, what I look like? I came into the system before there were bulldogs. I'm from Fresno. I house with the bulldogs. He said, those are my homeboys. But I don't identify with something that came after me. The homie from Dakota, he's the one I've mentioned in a lot of my videos. He's the one that it always stuck in my head. I've never forgotten it. That's why I still talk about it. This was somebody who had been doing time since the 70s, who had done a lot of serious things in prison. He had a lot of juice, right? A lot of people stayed away from him, not out of fear. They just didn't like him. He was grouchy, big ass dude, grouchy. And me, being a youngster, a YA baby, just starting my time, I used to fuck with that dude. And he used to laugh, but he was one of them dudes where he didn't want anybody to see him laugh. It was funny. And he's the one that told me, it doesn't take a man to survive prison. Keep in mind, this was 1995. He started doing time in the early 70s. And he tells me, it don't take a man to survive prison. If you're a killer, they got a place for you. If you're a gangster, they got a place for you. If you're a rat, they got a place for you. He said, everybody has a place. He said, when I first came in the system, everybody was together. You had to be a man. He goes, you don't have to be a man no more. And he told me, you know where the real men are at? He said, they're on the streets, Holmes. He said, there's something in us that doesn't let us do what they can do out there. And I remember being a youngster, 20 years old, looking at this big ass dude, big old whip, the reputation that he had. And I was like, what the fuck? Never expected it and never forgot it. I remember I was asking him one day, because he was a barber. And I asked him one day, I said, hey, Holmes, you know you would have been a Northerner, right? If the North was out back then. Would you? Like, seriously, Holmes, answer me the question. Would you have been? And that old man, for a second, like, turned his head and he thought about it. And then he looked at me and said, man, fuck you. And I laughed. I said, you thought about it, though. Things happened on that yard that he was a part of. I told the story, where two dudes, the only two dudes I ever saw in prison, used the N-word. Both got hit, and the rumors were it was because of that old man. Doing time with them older cats like that was a trip. It was a learning lesson. I learned a lot from those dudes. I remember that same dude from Dakota. Him and my older homeboy, they knew each other from the early 70s, San Quentin. And my homeboy tells him one day to tell me about when a Northerner got on him. And I was like, what? I said, what happened? And he said, hey, Holmes, I've always been this size. Eh? He's, like I said, he was a big-ass dude. And there was a northerner at some table, and I guess back then in San Quentin and Old Folsom, they didn't really have the designated areas the way the yards are designated, and hey, this is our area, that's your area, that type of thing. I don't know. But there was a northerner at a table, and the homie from Dakota, went up to him and said, hey, Holmes, the fuck you doing at this table? Get the fuck out of here. This is our table. And the northerner was like, oh, I didn't know. My bad. Obviously, he didn't say my bad. I'm just filling in the. But the northerner was like, I didn't know. And the northerner took off. And the homie from Dakota, big ass hog, right? He's sitting at that table thinking he really did something. A few moments later, that northerner came back with a damn sword and butchered the homie from Dakota. He said he made it back to his cell. He tore his sheets, wrapped himself up, and laid on his bunk to die. That's another thing about prison a lot of you guys don't know about. You get hit, you don't go and ask for medical attention. If you do that, you will never be anything other than just a dude on the yard after that. You will never be somebody that would be like, hey, who's that so-and-so right there? Nah, you'd be like, hey, that's that vato that fucking got whacked and went and cried to the cops and medical. So Dakota, he went, wrapped himself up, and laid on his bunk to die. And was dying. It was a CO doing count that noticed all the blood everywhere. He said he was leaking so bad there was nothing he could do to hide the blood. So he survived. He said he learned a valuable lesson. And he shared it with me that day. No matter where anybody's from, no matter what faction they run with, there's some motherfucking killers in there. Don't ever underestimate anybody. I got that a lot from the older homies. I got that a lot from older whites when we would talk. They would tell me the stories how back in San Quentin in the 70s, hunting people down on the tiers, climbing tiers, getting stabbed, stabbing people, getting shot, seeing other people get shot. I've said for years, man, I have stories. I have knowledge handed down to me from guys that started doing time in the 60s and 70s. And I keep that knowledge here. And this is part of the reason why when I hear other people talk about stuff and talk about people that they have no personal knowledge of, no understanding of, it kind of irks me. Because I know the things that I know, the stories that I have, the conversations I've had, the interactions I've had, who I've had these conversations, interactions with. I know the views and money that would come with it. And I never talk about it. I never go there. And that's why it trips me out when people say, oh, he only does it for clicks. He only does it for views. He only does it for the money. Well, every content creator puts out content that he wants people to click on and view and share and like, subscribe. We do that. But I'll be damned if I'm going to sell other people out to make a little bit of money. That's my video for today, man. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Everybody, please be safe, be smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them, man. I'm out of here.